Have you ever noticed that some female behaviors, even subtle ones, can silently destroy a man? In this video, I will reveal the 8 unacceptable behaviors in women that no man should tolerate. Signs that most men do not even notice. You will understand how to recover your authority, protect your dignity, and no longer be emotionally manipulated. If you are tired of being silently betrayed, stay with me until the end, because the power game is about to begin. If topics like psychology, philosophy, and the darkness of the human soul interest you, subscribe to the channel now. There are comments that seem harmless, but actually act like small needles, piercing your self-esteem. Phrases like, "Wow, you are shorter than I imagined, but you are cute," or "You do not know how to do this right, do you?" can come with laughter in a playful tone. And that is exactly what makes them dangerous. Because, disguised as humor, you feel wrong to react. Machiavelli said that a prince must recognize danger, even when it appears as kindness. When you laugh at these provocations to avoid conflict, you are accepting a small blow to your honor. It may seem exaggerated, but it is these subtle comments, repeated over time, that corrode your self-confidence almost imperceptibly. The great trap of these jokes is that they test your reaction. If you remain silent, she realizes she can continue. If you get upset, there is a good chance you will hear the classic phrase, "Wow, it is just a joke. Can't you take it lightly?" And suddenly, you are no longer discussing disrespect, but defending yourself from being too sensitive. It is a psychological game. Machiavelli reminds us that all power is born from a clear understanding of limits. By accepting these provocations, you are not only allowing disrespect to grow, but you are training the other person to believe they can test your dignity without consequences. These provocations do not happen because the woman necessarily wants to humiliate you. In many cases, they are unconscious mechanisms to test your emotional strength. Every relationship is a dance between who leads and who follows. If you do not impose the presence of your value, the other side will instinctively occupy that space. A joke may seem trivial, but it reveals if you are someone who protects your integrity or someone who yields ground in the name of false harmony. Men Machiavelli would respect are not those who shout, but those who respond with serene firmness, making it clear that there is no joking with respect. Therefore, faced with a provocation, the response does not need to be aggressive, but must be firm. A direct look, a simple, "I do not joke about this kind of thing," and moving on without explanations has much more power than any argument. This kind of attitude shows something rare, clarity. And clarity is irresistible because it shows that you know who you are and what you deserve. When you laugh at comments that hurt, you are not being mature. You are becoming an accomplice to your own devaluation. True maturity is having the courage to take a stand without fear of seeming difficult. Have you ever felt betrayed by subtle attitudes that seemed normal in a relationship? Leave your answer in the comments. One of the most subtle and dangerous signs of disrespect in a relationship is when a woman starts canceling commitments or changing her plans without consideration, making you feel like your time is worth nothing. At first, it may seem like just an unforeseen event, but when these cancellations become frequent, or when she makes it seem like your schedule must revolve around hers, something deeper is happening. And when you dare to show discomfort, manipulation appears. She sighs, rolls her eyes, and accuses you of making a scene or being exaggerated. That is when you enter a dangerous game, the game of guilt. Machiavelli said that one who desires to maintain power cannot constantly give in to the pressure of another, because each misunderstood concession is a silent loss of sovereignty. Cancellation, when used as a way to devalue your priorities, is more than a simple breach of commitment. It is a test. She wants to see how far you are willing to give up your life, not to upset her. The worst part is that many times you end up giving in not out of love, but out of fear. Fear that the argument will lead to distance. Fear of seeming too rigid. This fear traps you. It makes you reorganize your routine, put friends aside, abandon projects, just to remain available. And in the end, you gain no respect, only lose presence. As Machiavelli would teach, he who does not set limits from the start sees his kingdom taken little by little. The guilt game is sophisticated because it shifts the focus of the conversation. Instead of talking about her attitude, you find yourself apologizing for having feelings. It is as if being frustrated were a mistake, as if legitimate discomfort were a sign of weakness. This is emotional manipulation. It is a way to invert power and make you question your own perception of reality. Little by little, you learn to avoid confrontations, swallow opinions, and walk on eggshells inside your own life. What was once just a cancellation becomes a pattern of control, a pattern that drains your energy and makes you lose the essence of the man you should be. The only way to break this cycle is by standing firm but calm. It is not about arguing or shouting, but about making it clear that you have time, a life, and a mission that are non-negotiable. If something disrespects you, do not apologize for feeling that way. A simple, "This does not work for me," said calmly, is more powerful than 1,000 justifications. When you protect your schedule, you are not being selfish. You are preserving your kingdom. Machiavelli would say that the true prince is not the one who pleases everyone, but the one who is clear about what is non-negotiable. And in the game of respect, those who do not define their own rules always end up playing by the others. One of the most devastating and hardest to notice behaviors is conditioned affection. This happens when the woman's affection, gestures of love, or even attention depend on how much you obey her expectations. It is as if each display of affection were a reward for having done exactly what she wanted. At first, it may seem normal. She becomes more distant when upset, or more affectionate when you do something special. But when this becomes a pattern, the relationship stops being a genuine exchange and becomes an emotional training ground. Machiavelli taught that one who desires to maintain power over another does not need to use physical force. It is enough to control rewards and punishments so that the other molds, themselves seeking approval. This type of behavior silently corrodes masculinity. You start making concessions, not because you want to, but because you fear losing the little affection you receive. It is as if love were a prize, not a free feeling. You find yourself adapting your tastes, changing your opinions, and even your routine just to avoid being punished with coldness, silence, or distance. The problem is that by accepting this game, you stop being a whole man and become just a shadow of yourself, always waiting for the next crumb of approval. Machiavelli would say that when a prince spends too much to please, he loses the essence of leadership. And in relationships, that means losing respect. Conditioned affection is a very effective form of manipulation because it touches your deepest emotional need to be valued. You begin to doubt yourself, thinking that if she pulled away, the problem is you. This is how many men spend years living relationships where love is used as currency, always paying with pieces of their dignity to receive a false sense of acceptance. But there is a brutal difference between loving and depending. Those who truly love do not manipulate, do not play reward games, and do not turn affection into a tool of power. To protect yourself from this behavior, it is necessary to redefine your value. Genuine affection is not something you should earn by erasing or molding yourself. The best response to conditioned affection is not to shout, argue, or try to buy affection with obedience. It is to remain firm in your essence. Tell yourself, I do not need to beg for love, because love is not something you plead for. It is something built with mutual respect. When you maintain your stance, even in the face of silence or coldness, you send a clear message that your value is non-negotiable. This clarity is so powerful, it changes the entire dynamic because no one can manipulate someone who knows their own strength. Tests are part of any relationship. After all, we are human beings seeking to understand each other's limits. But when these tests become constant, suffocating, and come with destructive comparisons, something is deeply wrong. Phrases like, "My ex did this much better," or "You are not as fun as so-and-so," are not innocent. They have the conscious or unconscious intention of undermining your confidence. Machiavelli would say that he who wants to weaken an opponent first corrodes his perception of himself. And when you let yourself be affected by this type of comment without taking a stand, you are opening gaps to lose control of your own self-esteem. These comparisons not only diminish you, but also create a false sense of inferiority, which can lead you to compete for validation that never genuinely comes. The man who lives trying to prove that he is better than the ex, or that he meets her expectations, ends up trapped in a cycle of anxiety and submission. The real problem here is not the comparison itself, but what it reveals: a psychological power game. Each test and each comment is a strategic move to see how far you will accept disrespect without reacting. Machiavelli would say that whoever allows their honor to be mocked once allows it to be repeated indefinitely. It is important to understand that many of these tests happen instinctively, not necessarily out of malice. The woman, in some cases, wants to know if you are a firm man who maintains his position even when challenged. If you are easily shaken or desperately try to prove your worth, you transmit insecurity, and insecurity never inspires respect. A man's strength is not in retaliating with anger, but in calmly and firmly making it clear that he will not accept being compared or diminished. A simple phrase like, "If you are with me, there is no room for comparisons," said calmly, can end a cycle of tests. The key here is not to enter the game. The more you try to respond to each provocation or prove yourself, the more you show that you are playing the match she controls. True power lies in assertive silence and unwavering posture. If someone needs to test you all the time, it is because they have not understood your value, and you should not waste energy trying to convince those who are not ready to see it. As Machiavelli said, it is better to impose respect with clarity than to beg for acceptance with weakness. The man who understands this does not compare himself, does not measure himself against shadows of the past. He simply stands firm, knowing that those who truly respect him would never put him in that position. Silence can be as powerful a weapon as any word, especially when used as punishment. There is a big difference between staying silent to reflect and staying silent to manipulate. When a woman decides to give you the famous cold treatment, ignoring your messages, avoiding eye contact, or simply withdrawing without explanation, she is, consciously or not, using silence as a tool of control. Machiavelli, who deeply understood the nature of power, would say that what is not communicated openly becomes a hidden strategy. The problem is that when this type of behavior becomes recurrent, you start walking on eggshells, trying to guess what you did wrong and how you can earn her attention again. This silent manipulation creates a state of constant tension. You begin to doubt yourself, imagining that any word or action could trigger another episode of distance. And little by little, you start molding yourself to her mood, putting aside your own feelings and needs. The man who yields to this dynamic loses his power because he becomes reactive, always waiting for the next gesture of approval to breathe a sigh of relief. Machiavelli would say that when a prince depends on another's mood to rule, he is no longer sovereign of himself. Silence as punishment is not only a sign of emotional immaturity, but also a form of psychological conditioning. It is as if she says without words, "If you do not do what I want, I will withdraw my affection and presence." This is not love, it is control. It is an attempt to bend your will without needing to argue or negotiate. When you accept this game, you end up reinforcing this behavior, making it even more frequent and intense. To break this cycle, it is necessary to invert the logic. It is not about retaliating with coldness, but about not letting manipulation affect you. When her silence does not dictate your emotions, you regain control of the game. Be clear but firm. If there is something wrong, we can talk, but I do not accept games. Said calmly and confidently, this changes the entire dynamic. After all, the power of those who use silence to punish only exists when there is someone willing to be punished. As Machiavelli said, the true leader does not negotiate his inner peace for the approval of others. Nothing is more demoralizing for a man than being beside someone who diminishes his ambitions. projects, or vision of the future. The devaluation of your goals can come subtly, with comments like, "That is nonsense," or "You should think of something more realistic." Or it can be explicit, with direct attacks and comparisons that undermine your confidence. Machiavelli said that he who allows his vision to be mocked loses not only respect but also power. When you accept that someone treats your dreams as irrelevant, you are communicating that you do not believe in them as much as you should. The man who loses connection with his mission also loses his inner strength. A healthy relationship should be a space of mutual support where both grow together. When a woman tries to diminish or ridicule what you want to build, it is a warning sign. Often, this devaluation comes from fear that you will grow and cease to be controllable. It is an unconscious game where, if she manages to make you believe your goals are small or unrealistic, you will give them up and remain trapped in the dynamic she establishes. Machiavelli would say that he who controls a man's vision of the future controls his entire life. Devaluation can also appear as sabotage disguised as concern. Phrases like, "I think this will not work," or "What if you fail?" seem caring but are actually seeds of doubt planted in the soil of your confidence. The problem is that if you do not have clarity about your mission, these seeds quickly take root. With each new criticism, you begin to question whether you are really capable, and little by little, you give up everything that made you feel alive. When a man abandons his goals to maintain a relationship, he loses not only the other person's respect, but, more importantly, his self-respect. The only way to deal with this is to stay firm on your path. You do not need to fight, justify, or try to convince those who do not believe in you. What you need is to prove to yourself that your goals are greater than any external opinion. The right woman will admire your focus and not try to erase it. The wrong one will try to sabotage it, so you do not realize how much you are wasting your own strength. Remember what Machiavelli would say: a prince who abandons his kingdom for an external voice is not a prince. He is a servant. Your mission comes first, because without it you lose your access and end up living at the mercy of others' judgment. One of the clearest signs of a toxic relationship is when everything becomes one way. You give attention, invest time, show care and effort, but when you need something, you find only indifference. Lack of reciprocity is a silent blow to masculinity because it makes you feel that nothing you do is enough. Machiavelli would say that he who gives everything without demanding anything becomes a slave to ingratitude. When demands are always unilateral, you face a dangerous imbalance. She demands like a queen but treats you like a subject. This dynamic creates a cycle of emotional wear. You feel compelled to give more and more, hoping that at some point she will recognize your worth. But the more you yield, the more the scale tips against you. The truth is that when someone notices you do not set limits, demands tend to grow, and reciprocity becomes smaller and smaller. And so, you get used to living in a state of eternal emotional debt, believing you constantly need to prove that you deserve love. It is important to understand that true love is not a relationship of demands. When a woman constantly demands, but never offers emotional support or gestures of appreciation, she makes it clear that she sees the relationship as an unequal exchange in which she dictates the rules and you only obey. Machiavelli, observing power dynamics, warned that a ruler who gives everything the people ask without demanding anything in return loses authority and respect. The same goes for relationships. When you do not set limits, you end up being seen as someone without self-worth. The solution to this behavior is not to become cold or selfish, but to establish fair reciprocity. You must have the courage to say calmly, "I also deserve to be treated with respect and attention." This simple stance changes everything because it makes clear that you are not in a relationship to be emotionally exploited. When you understand your worth and do not accept less than you deserve, you create a natural barrier against people who try to drain your energy without offering anything in return. As Machiavelli said, power is not in giving everything, but in knowing what must not be given. If there is one thing Machiavelli teaches us, it is that those who do not set limits lose the throne to those who dare to test it. These 8 behaviors are not just female attitudes to avoid, but clear signs that you need to reclaim your own sovereignty. When a man gives up his values to be accepted, he ceases to be a king and becomes a subject of a fragile love built on submission. Respect begins with you, and if you do not defend it, no one will do it for you. If this video awakens something inside you, made you reflect on your own limits, then do not leave without leaving your mark. Subscribe to the channel right now, click the like button, and write in the comments "enough" or "I woke up" to mark the moment you decided to stop accepting crumbs. This is just the beginning of a journey to recover your strength, clarity, and presence. And I guarantee the next video will take you even deeper into the game of power and male self-sufficiency. Some may think this was the end, but beware, the war is not over yet. There are still things left unsaid. These 2 videos in front of you are not here by chance. And what if everything you believe about yourself is just a reflection of someone else's gaze? Click now on one of the videos beside and start breaking that mirror. You will have to risk the click. So, which one will you choose?